soil. A long time back, there were only rocks on the earth. Long back on earth, only rocks were present. Soil was not present, only rocks were present on earth. The action of sunlight, water and wind. The action of sunlight, water and wind and changes in weather broke the rocks into smaller and smaller pieces. You can have a look at these pictures. Say action of sunlight. When the rocks are actually exposed to sunlight for a long duration of time, okay, at the same time. So when during the rain, when the water falls on the rocks continuously, so in the monsoon season, at the same time due to action of wind. So these three, sunlight, water, then wind. So when the rocks are actually exposed to sunlight for a long duration of time, for water as well as wind, do you know they break into small pieces? Okay, they break into small pieces. Now, over many years, so these rocks broke into very small pieces to form soil. So rocks, when they powder, otherwise when they break into small pieces, they form soil. So this process might have occurred for many years. So that's how the soil is formed. Now, when plants and animals die, they rot and mix with the soil. Whenever a plant or animal die, they rot. Rot means they decay, decompose. Their body parts get broken down and they are converted into very simple form, simple particles, and they mix with the soil. The soil is made up of two main parts. Soil is made up of two main parts. Tiny pieces of rocks. Rock exposed to sunlight, rain and wind, they break into tiny pieces, that is tiny pieces of rocks. And rotted pieces of dead plants and animals. And animals and plant, when they die, they rot and mix with the soil, that is this. One is tiny piece of rocks and other one is rotted pieces of dead plants and animals. Whenever the plant or animal die, they decay. Decay means their body parts break into small particles and they mix with the soil later on. So the soil contains tiny pieces of rocks and other one is rotted pieces of dead plants and animals. The rotted plants and animals are called humus. Do you know the plant or animal body, when it undergoes decay, they form a very fertile good manure. It is called humus, H-U-M-U-S. Now, humus is a dark brown or black in color. When we see the soil itself, sometimes we can understand whether the soil is fertile or not. That is mainly based on what quantity of humus that soil contains. Suppose humus is present, the soil color will be somewhat dark brown or black in color. It is good for the healthy growth of plants. Humus contains many nutrients, so which it can give for the plants. So plants will be very healthy in the soil where humus is present in more quantity. Soils collected from different places have different colors. When we collect the soil from different places, they have different colors. Some are light brown. Few soil will be light brown. Some are dark brown. In some places, the soil will be red. It may be light brown, dark brown, or even it may be red. These soil also feel different. When we test them, we can make out they feel different. They are different because they are made up of different rocks. The color of the soil has changed, even their texture is different. When we test them, what we feel, that is called texture of the soil. That is different mainly because of different rocks. Because whatever tiny particles of rocks are added, that is to that particular soil, they give that particular color, even the powder of that particular rock. Now there is one small activity. What does soil contain? To identify what the soil contains, we can perform this activity. Place some soil from a garden. We need to place soil from a garden in a large bottle. In a large bottle, we should place the soil. Pour some water in the bottle. We can pour water into that particular bottle. Place the lid on and shake the bottle well. Then we need to place the lid and shake the bottle well. Now, let the bottle remain undisturbed for several minutes. Keep the bottle at one particular place without disturbing it. Observe the different layers that settle down. So what we'll do, we'll place soil in the large bottle, then pour little water into it, close the lid of that particular bottle, shake it well, then keep it undisturbed for many minutes, that is several minutes, in one particular place. Do you know we can observe different layers that settle down? See here. The bottle will show the different layers like this. There will be layer gravel at the bottom because it is heavier. Then there will be sand. Then there will be clay. Then maybe one water layer is present and humus will be floating on the surface. So these are the 4 different layers basically we get in any soil. Gravel, sand, clay, then humus. Okay, humus is formed by the decayed parts of plants and animals. Remember. Now, in the activity, you notice that small stones called gravel settle at the bottom. This one. Small stones called gravel will settle at the bottom. Then, above the gravel is a layer of soil containing large particles. Above the gravel, there is a layer of soil containing large particles. That is this, which is called as sand. So, this is sand. So, it will be somewhat little larger particles. These are sand particles. You can see the particles separately. We can see the particles separately, both gravel and sand. We can see the particles separate. Above the sand, you can see a layer of soil containing very fine particles. Very fine particles you can see above the sand. You cannot see the particles separately. It is somewhat sticky like we can't see the particles separate. So this is a layer of clay and this layer is called as clay. In sand and gravel, we can see the particles separate. You can see. So this is one. This particle is clay. Gravel, you can see the particles separate here. Sand also you can see them separate. Whereas in the case of clay, we cannot see the particles separate. Floating on the top of the water are dark brown pieces of humus. On the top, you can see some certain things floating. So that is actually nothing but humus. It is nothing but humus, which is actually floating on the top. That is called humus. Then, there are spaces between the soil particles. These spaces are filled with water and air. So, between each particle, between gravel and sand, there will be space. That space will be occupied by air and water. Between the sand and clay, again, there will be space. That is occupied by air and water. Here, very clearly you can make out. Between humus and clay, it is being filled with water. As well as air also will be present. Now, we have one more activity here. Soil contains air and water. So, how to prove that soil contains air first? Okay, take some soil in a bowl. In this particular bowl, you need to take soil. Pour some water over the soil. Pour water over the soil. You will see bubbles of air coming out of the soil. You take soil in the bowl, then you pour water into it. You can see the bubbles coming out here from this particular soil. So this is because the air present in the spaces between the soil particles. So between the soil particles, between this and this, there will be air space. So there will be like air present between them. So whenever you pour water, they are actually coming out. This is because the air present in the spaces between the soil particles escapes in the form of bubbles. In the form of bubbles, it is actually coming out. So this activity proves that soil contains air. These bubbles are nothing but air itself. Then soil contains water. How we can prove this? Take some soil in a bowl and heat it on a stove. So in the bowl you take little soil and you should heat it. You don't do it. I'm just telling this activity. Take some soil in a bowl and heat it on a stove. Hold a metal plate over it. So we can place a metal plate on this. We need to place a lid. You will see some droplets of water forming on the underside of the plate. You can see here water droplets. When you open the lid, you can see here water droplets on the lower surface of the lid. Then, this is because water present in the soil evaporates on heating and condenses when it touches the cold plate. Do you know this particular lid? Whenever we heat this particular soil in the bowl, okay, if there is a water present in there, it will evaporate, because whenever we heat, it will evaporate. That evaporated water will collect at this lid, at the lower surface of the lid. As lid initially it will be cold, right? So whenever that particular vapor that evaporates, the water that evaporates from the soil, whenever it actually touches this cold lid, it will condense. Condense means it becomes water droplet. Vapor is gaseous form of water. Whenever we cool it, it is converted into water droplets. So this activity proves that soil contains water. Then, so there are two questions to answer. What are rocks made up of or made of? Check this. Question is asked, what are rocks made of? Rocks are made up of tiny grains called minerals. So your answer should be minerals. Rocks are made up of tiny grains called minerals. M-I-N-E-R-A-L. Next question. What does soil contain? What does soil contain? Check this. Soil is made up of two main parts. Tiny pieces of rocks. Soil contains tiny pieces of rocks and rotted pieces of dead plants and animals, which is called humus. So you can write it as soil is made up of tiny pieces of rocks and humus. Humus.